Hello, my divine being, and welcome to this week's episode of Confessions of a New Age Goddess. As always, I'm the New Age Goddess herself, Melissa. Joining me today is Annie Larson. Annie is an intuitive, medium, healer, psychic, and past life regression therapist. So, Annie, welcome to the pod.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa. I'm excited to be here.
Likewise. So, Annie, where in the world are you joining us from?
So I'm just outside of Washington, D.C., in a suburb of Northern Virginia.
Very cool. Awesome. Okay, East Coaster. All
Yes.
right. And then, yeah, if you kind of want to let the audience know a little bit more in detail who you are and what you do.
So I'm Annie Larson, and I consider myself probably mostly a medium. That's most of the work that I do, but I also do Reiki healing, past life regression, astrology, tarot card readings. And the reason I do all these things, because I believe all of them intertwine with each other, because I think everything that I do is about healing. So mediumship and past life regression and Reiki healing, it's all about healing.
Yes, exactly. I mean, most people that I've talked to, myself included, it's kind of like you do a mixture of a couple different modalities to really get that full benefit. And
Right.
even sometimes, let's say you're doing one modality, then a skill or talent that you have from another one might pop up organically. And it's great
Yes.
to have that level of understanding to
Yes.
really give the client, whoever you're working with, that full experience.
I agree totally with that. Yes.
And then, I mean, how did you get started in working in the spiritual world, to begin with?
So for me, I was born this way, and it was really something that I ran away from rather than ran towards. And it was more surrender
Mhm.
than it was, gee, I really want to do this work. I actually did this work when I was younger and then took a break, meaning I just didn't do readings for people. I still had all the intuitive and the mediumship, but just didn't do it for other people. And then came back to this work really after my kids were grown and kicking and screaming. I had had some bad experiences in my 20s. I really didn't want to do this work anymore. And when things started happening, probably about 13 years ago now, um, I was like, I'm not doing this. Nothing can make me do this. I don't want to have the bad experiences. And spirit kind of showed me the way. I surrendered to it. Everything got so much stronger. And finally, in that surrender, I was like, okay, because one of the things that I saw when I did readings for people, their faces changed. So I could see them go from these anxious faces to really a calm. There was a serenity about their face. And I realized the work that I was doing was helping with their healing.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I always kind of preach that myself when people say, oh, what would I get out of this session? X, Y, and Z. But why you're really here usually is a reason you're not even aware of. And it is changing in ways, especially people who are new to this industry just couldn't even imagine. And that's quite rewarding in itself.
Right.
And I'm curious, you did say that you were kind of born this way. Um, how did you know that? Was it a guide started talking to you as a child, or how did you really discover that?
It really was. I saw things that other people didn't see. And when you're really young, and I'm talking really, really young, 2, 3 years old, you really can't process what you're seeing. You can't say, oh, these are
Mhm.
humans and these are ghosts.
Mhm.
But I grew up in overseas in Europe. I spent a few early years there, and I remember having experiences there. But again, so young, you can't really say, oh, yeah, I'm seeing ghosts. When I got a little bit older, that's when I started realizing one, I'm different in a way that, with classmates and stuff, they considered me weird because I talked about things and did things that other people didn't do, like being in the knowing. I would know something and they're like, well, how do you know? And I'm like, well, I know because I know. And I also had very prophetic dreams. My dreams came true. People knew these things about me. And, classmates started calling me a witch. And that wasn't very pleasant to go through. But I always knew I was very different. And then as I got older, started embracing these things, started reading tarot cards and playing cards and dabbling in divination and started doing professional readings for people.
Okay, great, great. Yeah, I think that's how it comes to a lot of people, something that came to them organically as a child, and then you're different, right? And then maybe,
Right.
you kind of have you're an adult, you have your own family, and then maybe, when the kids are out of the house, you have time to like focus in on it a little bit more. So that makes perfect sense to me. And then you have that adult understanding of it too later in life as well. So that helps.
Well, it's true because some of the things that happened to me in my late 20s, because I was doing this work, I was doing paranormal investigations and I was doing readings for people, but there wasn't anybody really out there. We're talking many years ago. This is long before there was anybody on television doing this. So it wasn't really well known. It wasn't really accepted. There wasn't really people to guide you in this. So when I started having some bad experiences, it wasn't like I could turn to somebody who's on TV or somebody who's around. There are a lot of mediums now, it seems, but back then there were not a lot of people that you could turn to.
And, how did you get that guidance due to the fact that it wasn't as prevalent as it is today? What steps did you take in your journey?
For me, again, I think it's the organic. It was, wow, I get stuff, or, people saying, wow, she gets things, and people asking my guidance. Still to this day, it's funny. I have a lot of friends who don't really believe in what I do. And quite honestly, I don't really care whether they believe or not. Like, everybody has their journey and their path. But when people want to know something or they have a loved one die, they'll always pull me aside and say, hey, can you help me out with this? So I find it funny. And it was kind of the same way when I was a kid too, where they were making fun of me. But
Mhm.
at the same time, they're like, hey, I'm going to the races. Can you pick the horse?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is an actual true story that I've told before.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that, but then when I really need you, maybe it's not so strange. Maybe I believe her
Right.
after all. Right.
Right. I always say nobody believes in mediums until they've lost somebody that they'd like to connect with. And then they're willing to try a medium. And so they go out and do their search. And normally, most of my clients come from word of mouth.
Yes, yes. Likewise. That's always a good way. Referrals are always my favorite.
They're the best ways, I think, because they're ready for the reading.
Yes.
Whereas, when people just kind of pop off the street, if it's a curiosity, there's nothing wrong with curiosity, but sometimes it's a little bit more difficult that way.
Exactly. Exactly. You have to, the client themselves also has to be ready.
I agree. I agree. And I think when they book a session with you, you probably know this too, they are ready. They
Yes.
may be skeptical, and that's okay. Skepticism is just fine.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. A lot of the clients that I've noticed that I get are new to what I do, but they were curious, they were ready, they were open-minded. And,
Right.
I think it's not just that they wanted the service, whatever it may be, they also wanted the explanation behind it,
Yeah.
prior, and that's fine. I'm more than happy to provide that because it makes it less intimidating.
Well, the other thing too, I think we have a responsibility for educating the public.
Yes.
So the more that we can tell people about mediumship and like Reiki healing and astrology and past life regression, the more that we help the public in general for them to be more accepting of these things that aren't so concrete. There's been a lot of stigmas, at least in my lifetime, I've experienced them about the work that I do. I think it's more accepted now, especially with the younger generation coming in. I think they're coming in more in tune and also more open to all of this, rather having some of these stigmas that I had to deal with as a child.
Oh yes, I definitely agree with that. This new wave is definitely more open-minded.
Yeah, well, I think it's been a new wave for a very long time. I was born at the very beginning of the 1960s. So I grew up in a hippie generation, very happy for that, and introduced to the metaphysical at a very young age. Had a lot of older siblings who were into this too. So my family, there's kind of a family lineage there too. So I got to have incredible experiences with the metaphysical and psychics and mediums and going to seances when I was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, I've been around this field for a very long time. And, way back in I think it was the 70s, in Georgetown in Washington, D.C., they had this metaphysical store called The Orb. And I got to go there and talk with all the people there when I was like 12 and 13 years old. So it was pretty incredible. There weren't a lot of like spiritualist churches and metaphysical stores and crystal stores. There's a lot of crystal stores now where it attracts kind of that metaphysical.
Right. And I know we were talking about education, how that's so important, because there are people who maybe, need one of these services, but they don't even know about it. They don't even know what it is. And if they're just introduced to it, then they could explore it and see if it is a good fit. And also these types of events, these types of stores, so that you have that sense of community. So you're asking someone who you can trust more than just Googling something, and that sense of community too, as well, is always very important.
And I think COVID has really kind of wiped out that sense of community. I know I personally have felt it. I was talking to a medium over the weekend, and we both are feeling the same thing. She does work probably about 20 miles from me, but we were talking about, a little bit of the burnout that we're both experiencing. And I think it's because the community is kind of non-existent. At least we're all feeling it right now. We're not meeting in person, so it's really a different experience. I really like doing phone sessions. For me, they're more pure because I don't see your face. I don't know what you look like. I don't know the facial movements you're making. So I really enjoy that. But I miss the community. I'm actually teaching a Reiki, an in-person Reiki class on Thursday for a pretty large group. And I realized, God, I'm really excited about this because it's going to be in person. And even though we're going to social distance and wear masks and stuff, it's just great to be in that energy. And, going back and doing some group readings, which I was asked to recently, it's great to be back in person with people and feeling their energy.
Yeah, it's vital. And, we're trying to get it through other mediums, which that's all we can really do, especially earlier on. But yeah, it's not the same. It's kind of like the generic version of something, not quite the same, but we're trying.
But you know what, like your podcasts and other podcasts and stuff really serve a vital purpose for spreading the word. And that's why I like to come on podcasts, because it's about educating and sharing and healing. But, you're serving a really vital purpose for people so that they can hear what's going on and maybe open themselves up to it. But you're serving the community. I mean, you really are the community right now that people are tuning into.
Yeah. Is any way that the message can get across?
Yeah,
it's important. Definitely. Totally agree. And then, I know, Annie, you do so many things, so we could be here all day, but just to kind of hone in on one of your gifts, I really wanted to speak about past life regression. Could you kind of explain to the audience a little bit what that is and how you do it?
So past life regression really has a warm place in my heart, because I think people can find out so much about themselves and the karma that they brought into this lifetime. So I think it's about healing too. And I talk about karma a lot. In astrology, we look at the karma that you brought in through the stars and how you decided to come in. But through past life regression, we can really take you back to a place where you can experience maybe what you went through. And maybe you had lifetimes where you didn't accomplish what you were supposed to accomplish. And it's really interesting. I'm renovating my house, so I'm watching all these house shows on television to kind of get ideas about how to, update, modernize. And on one of the shows, this woman had a birthmark, and it was pronounced, and it was over her shoulder, this big red birthmark. And I looked at my husband and I said, I bet she died in battle in a past life to bring that birthmark, such a large birthmark in. And if you look at your own birthmarks, have you ever looked and said, I wonder how I got that. And what does that mean? And, I find that really, really fascinating. But taking people back into a past life where they can heal. And it's amazing to me how it pertains to this lifetime
Mhm.
and what they still can heal that they didn't heal from a past lifetime. And I'm trained by Dr. Brian Weiss.
Yes.
Um, I've studied with him a couple of times, but I actually certified through him to do this in, with best practices and stuff with one of the top people in the world who does past life regressions.
Yes, I did read, Many Lives, Many Masters, very popular book. Um,
Great book.
yeah,
Great. And I always look at Brian and I'm like, wow, you are so brave, because here he was, this academia, this academic and this professor, and he taught psychology and, he or psychiatry and went out on a limb to
mm,
help people. And Brian loves mediums. He thinks that mediums are very helpful in this world, in the work that he does. But I find it so amazing and how brave he was to step forward and write Many Lives, Many Masters, and some of his other books too, all about healing.
yes, yes. And I remember I also saw him on Oprah.
Yeah.
And yeah, and just some of the examples he gave, there was a man who he kept having dreams that he was flying a plane and it was crashing. And then they went into a past life where he was a pilot and died in a plane crash. So very concrete examples of what someone was experiencing in this life that connected to a past life and how to
Yeah.
heal that.
Well, there's also been a lot of documentaries about people who remember their past lives and can give names, dates. I know there's a little boy, I can't remember his name, but he was a fighter pilot and
Mm,
he could name all of his buddies. He knew who he was. And at a very young age, started telling his parents not to call him Eric, start calling him Robert. So he really had full remembrances of the past life and how he died. And he connected with the people from his squadron.
mm,
It's very well documented. I can't remember the name right now, but that's where I find past lives just fascinating. My own personal experience is my whole life I've had a reoccurring dream. And in this dream, like, I know my name, I know where I live, I know, like, I can give you every detail. For me, past lives helped heal that process for me and stop having those reoccurring dreams. So I think that was probably one of the big things that drew me to it, was me having these constant dreams about who I was and how many kids I had. It was just very strange.
right, right. Yeah. And you never know what's going to come up. But
Right.
then when you're kind of in it, you can see the parallels and things kind of start to make sense and the pieces come together. Okay, great. And then could you kind of explain a little bit how a session looks with you for that particular
Sure.
modality?
Sure. So right now I'm doing past life regressions over the phone because, again, I'm not really meeting with people one-on-one, but I really like doing them over the phone. So for me, um, I'm not taking them into hypnosis so much. You can do this rapid induction hypnosis when you're face to face, but in doing it over the phone, I'm just leading them through a meditation. And I'm actually using two different things. So I'm a 500-hour yoga teacher, and in that I have a specialty in yoga nidra, which is just divine sleep. It's the sleepy yoga, the
Yes.
easiest of all the yogas to do.
Yes.
But anyway, using techniques with yoga nidra and also techniques with meditation and also hypnosis, I lead people through. So normally when I'm doing a past life, I just have somebody get comfortable and, you know, probably wear something that's warm, because when you start going into these meditative states, what I'm trying to do is get people into a theta state.
Okay.
There's different levels of consciousness. And for me, I know if they're in a theta state, that's where healing really occurs. And that's kind of where I want to get people to through my voice and meditation. So it's just leading them through. And normally when I'm doing past lives, I start with current life. So I show people how easy it is to remember things from when you're 3 years old. And people have profound memories from when they're 2, 3, even before that, even from infancy.
Hmm.
And there's some that have been proved. I know with Brian, he went through some of this with clients where they remembered things from when they were born, and then through the parents could prove it. But you do have full memory. And that's where I want to get people to, is to open up and expand and let them really know that time is just a man-made thing, and that we can remember back to the dawn of time. We just have to access that. So taking people through memories when they're 3, 4, that's fascinating enough to do, because people will have these remembrances of maybe who's around them and their siblings and things that they haven't thought about in decades. And then it's opening up those doors, those doors of perception, and taking them back through time and pulling them into a time period, and then taking them through, what are you experiencing? And it's not just that moment in that lifetime, it's really through taking them through that entire lifetime. Where were you born? What did you do? Who's around you? The most fascinating thing for me is who's around you. So you'll have people who are in your life now. They may look completely differently, but who they are. And that's what I find most fascinating. I did a past life regression for a client probably a couple months ago, and her sister was there with her, looked completely differently, but she knew it was her sister. And what was so profound about that experience is that she has some difficulties with her sister in this lifetime. And through that past life and looking at their relationship then, it had everything to do with how the sister died. And there were some bad feelings around that relationship. And when she came back to, because in the end, when I take you through some of these past lives, I normally go through a childhood memory and then 2 past lives. That's normally the time frame. And then bring you back and we talk about it. And it's amazing. Like, she was crying and realizing, oh my God, I think I'm carrying something, and maybe she is too. So then it opened up this door for her and her sister to have a discussion about maybe some feelings, the karma that they brought in as sisters into this lifetime.
Yeah. And I think that in itself is profound, because
Yeah.
a lot of times you could say, oh, why do I have a difficult relation with this person? We're trying to get along, and it's not like some big profound thing even happened in this life, but I just have
Right.
feelings of resentment, what have you, and I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's another story that I tell, because it was one of the more profound stories that I had taken somebody through. And it was, I had a client who I knew had an eating disorder, and she was under a doctor's care for it. And she was working through it and stuff, and took her through a couple past life regressions. And in one of them, she was the head of the Druids. And the Romans were coming. So she was the high priest or priestess. I think she was a male in that incarnation, but the high priest. And she was trying to keep the Romans from coming and killing off all the Druids. So she had to do a sacrifice where they sacrificed a person and ate their brains. Did they want to eat the brains? No. And that's kind of a morbid thing to do, right?
Yeah.
So the Romans came anyway and killed everyone. Well, when we came back around, I said, do you wonder why maybe in this lifetime there's issues with food? Because think of the responsibility that she had in that lifetime, thinking that if she did this sacrifice, it would save them, right? The weirdest part about it is I knew nothing about the Druid. She knew nothing about it and stuff. She actually looked it up. It's historically correct.
Hmm.
So the Druids did do sacrifices. I think they ate the brains. They did try to stave off the Romans. Neither one of us knew anything about it. So I thought that that was so profound, not only for the issues she was having around eating in this lifetime, but that she found it historically accurate. So I find that really, really strange.
Oh, yes, exactly. It's not something where, oh, I learned that in school and I'm just thinking of
No,
it's something I saw it first,
right.
through
It's
hypnosis.
not like they teach about the Druids in school.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was not familiar with that. Um,
No,
but then
no.
I can go back and then, yes, prove it that it did actually happen in history. So no, I
Yeah.
think that is very interesting for sure.
And I didn't even think about it. Like she wrote to me later and told me. And
Hmm.
for me, I was like, wow, that is just crazy. I mean, that's profound. But I think, again, it brings in this lifetime some karma that she had from a past lifetime. So maybe if she can finish up and understand and work through it, that there'll be some healing in that. And that's really, again, I'll always come back to that. You in everything I do, I believe there's healing in it. There's something for you that can move you along.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and it's just what method works best for you, or what combination of different methods working together really works
Yeah,
best for you. Yeah,
yeah,
and I think a lot of people, they just think, oh, the issues that are coming up now as an adult, it's all from childhood. Maybe, some of it I'm sure is, but I don't think the average person really thinks, oh, it's from a past life. A lot of people
yeah.
don't think, they just don't think like that, because they think, oh, well, that's over with, if they even believe in past lives, but oh, that's over with, I must have processed it. Well, not necessarily.
Yeah, I don't, I think a lot of people don't believe in past lives because I mean, if you look at religion, it teaches you that you only have this one life, and some don't even believe in the afterlife or don't believe in heaven and hell. So when you look at traditional religions, I think that's where it becomes more difficult, because if you only have this one life, then how could you possibly have past lives? And for me, I'm like, we are eternal beings.
Hmm.
So, if you look at Einstein and believe that matter can't be destroyed, and we are matter, we can never be destroyed. There's always something left of us. And whatever is left of us continues on. So we really are eternal. When matter is formed, it stays forever. It can never be destroyed.
No, well put. That easily explains it, because I think some skeptics, they want more tangible proof, but when you kind of give a scientific example, then they're a little bit more willing to hear, I've noticed.
Well, yeah, and I agree. And I think for me, I'm always looking, I think quantum physics explains everything. And if you believe in quantum physics, which if you look at it, it really is new. It's new physics that came about in, I think the late 1800s. So it hasn't been around that long, but I think it really can explain, like, with mediumship and psychic and stuff. I'm like, am I really talking with deceased loved ones, or am I just going to the deceased loved one's dimension?
Mm.
And the dimension that they're in, where they can share memories and show me themselves and stuff. So for me, it's, I don't know how all this works, but I certainly study and read about it, because there has to be explanations about things. And I think there are scientific things out there that can't fully explain things, but they can certainly at least start shedding light on things.
Yeah, and I really like what you said. Am I going to a different dimension? No, that's profound to me, because it's sometimes, when you get messages, you
Right,
don't always know where it's coming from.
right.
You're getting it, it's accurate. It's not just from your imagination, but it's got to be pulled from something.
But let's talk about imagination. So I don't think there's anything wrong if it does come from your imagination. If you look at, again, I'm going to go back to Einstein. He said imagination is everything. When he sat quietly and meditated or slept or whatever he did, he was using his imagination. And nowadays I look at Elon Musk. I've been kind of studying him. Fascinating character, admitting that he was on the spectrum too, which doesn't surprise me with all of the star children and the indigos and stuff who probably are on the spectrum.
Right.
But Elon Musk, his imagination is wackadoo. It's incredible. And if he didn't allow himself that crazy imagination, the electric car wouldn't be, the Tesla wouldn't be where it is today.
Mhm.
So he's somebody I've been watching and studying because he's got, I think, that Einstein. And if we look at Einstein, maybe Einstein was on the spectrum too. But I think he thinks beyond the box. And thank God we have people thinking beyond the box. And we, as mediums and psychics and healers and all of that, we certainly are beyond the box, way beyond the box, because we're looking at things that aren't concrete and tried and true and based in fully in science, because there has to be some magic and imagination there. And that comes from people like Elon Musk and Einstein.
Oh, without a doubt. And it helps, yes, of course, with these practices, but even just kind of to your point in everyday life, when we're problem solving, when we are brainstorming,
Right.
we don't need to see it right in front of our face in order to know that something is possible. And I
Well,
think
the
it's
other thing too that you said that I love, you're using your imagination. Now you trust it. So you have a relationship. You've practiced, you've studied, you've done everything to know when you're in the knowing, you believe it.
yeah,
Whereas, and I believe we're all this way. I believe we're all intuitive. So
yes.
when other people get something for themselves, it's immediate doubt. And I think it's our society that says, oh no, if it doesn't come from another source that's on high, it can't be right. No, everything we have is inside, it's right here. And so when I'm teaching people about how to develop your intuition and your psychic and your mediumship abilities, it's that trust. And you already trust yourself. So it's just getting people to say, hey, trust yourself, because that's going to guide you better than anybody else can guide you.
Oh, 100%. I know when I started really, yes, trusting in
Yeah,
myself, then I didn't care if a message that I said sounded a little goofy because I know, that I trusted what I was getting. And then
right.
that's when I got the most clarity in my messages.
And you probably notice, and I say this all the time, I think when people call for a reading, they really already have the answers. They're just getting validation. Now, that may not be so with mediumship because you're connecting with a loved one on the other side and, having a conversation, but certainly about the intuitive parts.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's like a lot of people say, it's a muscle
Yeah.
to work out. And once you do that, and once you know how you're getting messages, it kind of falls together in an easier manner, and you don't have to struggle so much because it should be fluid.
Yeah, but I do think I agree with all of that, but I do think people are just calling you to get their own validation.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's something I would always encourage and say, trust your intuition.
yeah.
You're getting things, you're intuitive. So just start trusting that more. It's kind of like you really don't need me. Maybe you need me for, or not me, I'm using me as in a vernacular,
Mhm.
but just maybe you need a medium or a psychic just to help you with that validation. But after a while, you're not going to need anyone.
Yeah, it's more so guidance, more
Yes.
so guidance, giving people tools, suggestions, exercises, and then them developing it. But you need a mentor. Sometimes you need someone to show you kind of where to look.
Everyone needs a mentor. I
Mhm.
agree with that. I know a lot of people who say, oh, I'm reading books. I think you can glean certain things from books and stuff, but I really think you need somebody to help guide you through, somebody who can kind of show you the ropes and stuff. And there are times too, I think other people, because I get readings too, and sometimes I can't see the forest before the trees. They may see something I don't see because I'm right in the middle of the forest.
Yeah.
So they can say, hey, Annie, look over here. And it's like, oh, yeah, I should look over there. So sometimes that's very helpful in readings too.
Yeah, just direction.
Yeah.
But yes, I do always aim to empower my clients,
Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
another thing too, then they're going to start to trust themselves too
Yep.
and get deeper with it. So it benefits everyone. Okay, great. So yeah, you explained definitely, who you are, what you do. We talked about the past life regression, but is there anything that we didn't get to that you would like to share with the audience?
No, I think one of the biggest messages for me is that, you know, using your intuition, letting yourself guide yourself, and also about healing, talking about healing. Like, I believe as healers, we're just holding space for people. We're not really doing anything. We're just holding space to allow the person to heal for themselves. So get quiet with yourself and see if maybe you can help with your own healing in that manner.
Yes, like I do tell people I'm a conduit, you know.
Yeah,
Um, you're really healing yourself, but yes, the whole guide, the whole mentor thing,
yeah, I agree.
space, it is all part of the process.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I
great.
agree.
And then Annie, where can we find you if someone wants to work with you? Kind of just plug everything, and then I can add it to the show notes as well.
Sure. So you can always find me. The best way is through my website, which is Medium Annie with an IE, Larson with an R and an O. So mediumannielarson.com. Or if you type in my Instagram, it's at Medium Annie Larson. You should be able to find me using either one of those.
Okay, great. And then Annie, again, thank you so much for being a guest. It was very informative and, just a topic I've been wanting to talk about. So I'm so
Good.
glad we had an expert to speak about it.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Melissa, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And then for everyone out there, this is another great example on how spirituality and the use of different methods and teachings can really make great changes in your daily life. As always, if you are looking for a way to relieve stress or anxious thoughts, or looking to gain clarity, you can always book a Reiki energy healing session or a Akashic Records reading session with me at thenewAgeGoddess.com. Much love and namaste.